A simple can of tuna uncovered my wife's infidelity. So I kicked her out of the house and made her lose her job. We've been married for about 20 years. My wife and I are in our mid-40s, and we both got married relatively young, at least compared to the people around us. I'll tell you her name is Maria because I think what happened is specific enough for her to know it's about her, but no one else will. I don't care too much if she finds this post, but I know it's practically impossible. Since she barely understands what Reddit is, it can also be difficult to consistently use a fake name without making a mistake. Our marriage has been okay. It hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows, but it hasn't been a disaster either. Everyone has ups and downs after all. And I think the main cause of the problems between us has been finances. Since I now earn much more than her, those arguments and fights aren't very common. In terms of income, we were pretty even when we started. But her career isn't the type with much growth potential. And she took time off to take care of our 2 children while I handled the financial side. Now there's quite a big gap between us money-wise. I work every day except Sunday, so I'm not home all the time. But I have to support my family. I get extra days off from time to time, and I always make sure to use them to spend time with the kids. Naturally, being away from home so often means I can't be on top of everything that's going on when I'm not home. But I've tried to operate based on trust and spotting suspicious behavior. There hasn't been anything out of place from what I can actually see, so why worry unnecessarily? Well, I finally saw something that aroused my suspicions a few days ago, as stupid as it was. It seems that I took a break from work to pick up something I had forgotten at home and found an open can of tuna on the kitchen counter. What you need to know is that my wife is disgusted by tuna. That has always been the case, and my children weren't home since they were at an uncle's house during their summer vacation. There were other things, too, that made it clear someone was making a sandwich again. My wife hates emphasizing that she hates tuna. There was no one else in the house who could have been eating it, because it certainly wasn't me. My first suspicion was that she was cheating on me. I don't know why, but that was the first thought that came to my head. She should have been home at the time, but I searched the whole house and couldn't find her. It seemed as if she had to run away or something, but I couldn't imagine what could have led to that. I considered calling her right away, but I decided it was better that she didn't know I had even returned home. That would help me better understand what was going on. After all, it could simply be that a friend came over and needed something to eat. But if not, I reasoned that I'd rather not give her the chance to cover her tracks. So, I went back to work and tried to focus on what I had to do. Although not surprisingly, I was a little worried about the possibility that she was cheating on me. When I returned home that evening, she was there. So, I asked her how her day had been and if anything notable had happened. She responded by saying it had been a boring day at home. She only said she went grocery shopping in the morning and spent the rest of the day at home. Of course, that didn't match what I saw when I returned home in the afternoon. She clearly wasn't home, and to make sure I wasn't just remembering wrong, she claimed she had returned home before noon. So clearly she was lying, and there was no explanation for the tuna. Again, we've been married for 2 decades, so I know for a fact that this wasn't about her deciding to give tuna another chance. When I say she hates it, she really can't tolerate it at all. At this point, it was very clear that someone was in the house that she considered insignificant enough not to mention, or she had someone in the house that she considered too scandalous to mention. Whoever it was, they were clearly craving a tuna sandwich or something similar, and either they made it themselves, or she made it for them. That part didn't matter, but I needed to figure out who had been there and why she felt the need to hide that person's presence in her house. Honestly, I wanted to be more direct, like asking someone came through here, but I didn't want her to have the slightest suspicion given that at that point I knew I would have to investigate further. I knew I was going to check her phone as soon as I had the first opportunity. That opportunity conveniently came when she was sleeping, and I wasn't patient enough to wait for a time when I had less risk of being caught if she woke up and saw me checking her phone. Confronting her immediately wasn't a dilemma for me, so I took her phone off the nightstand and started checking her messages. I didn't see anything relevant there and scrolled down as far as I could. I assumed there would be a message from someone that same day or the day before, or at least a call, because the person must have communicated their presence somehow. That led me to check her call logs, and there it was. When I saw a call that same day from a number that wasn't saved, I took a picture of it because it was the only unsaved contact. When I expanded that entry in the call log, I saw that the call with the person lasted more than 2 minutes. So, it wasn't a wrong number, a scam call or someone trying to sell me something. After that, I went to Truecaller. Yes, you know the app. I entered the number, and it came up as Dr. Rosen. I knew that name as her doctor, but I found it strange that the number wasn't saved. After all, I know she talks to him from time to time, for some reason. I decided to check her Facebook Messenger as well because I had nothing conclusive and needed answers. At that point, I just had more questions. Luckily for me, right at the top, I saw Andrew Rosen as the last person she had chatted with. That's when all the alarms in my head started going off. Especially when the preview of the previous message sent said, "I love you too." At that moment, I felt my head spin, and part of me wanted to avoid the problems that would arise from opening the conversation. But I still did. Earlier that day, he asked if he could visit her. She told him she could, that I had already left for work. He responded with a heart emoji and a smiley face. Several minutes later, her next message was from around the corner. After that, there was nothing until 2 hours later when he said, "Sorry, I had to leave so suddenly. The inconveniences of being a doctor." She told him she missed him and that they would find a place to meet over the weekend. At that point, I still had the clarity to take my phone, record her screen, and slowly scroll through the chat logs. I needed to make sure I had proof of everything before it could potentially be deleted. If I confronted her, everything started to make sense. My wife was clearly cheating on me with her doctor. He had gone to visit her so they could sleep together, and at some point, while they were trying to make a sandwich or something, he had to rush back to the hospital. Maybe she had walked him to his car in the parking lot. Maybe she had followed him to the hospital. Or maybe just then she went grocery shopping. I couldn't remember seeing shopping bags or anything. When I came back and she should have returned from shopping, at that point, I knew I wouldn't be able to get all the answers until I confronted her. But I had the answer that mattered. Here's the weird thing. I was feeling a couple of very complex emotions at that moment. I had spent 20 years with this woman, and it only took me that long to realize she was a cheater. Maybe it was the first time, maybe she was on her 10th lover. I couldn't tell. However, it didn't matter. Now I felt the need to hurt her intensely. I wanted to throw things at her, hit her. I wanted her to feel pain. There was too much pent-up rage in me, and I watched her as she slept, trying to avoid doing something I would surely regret. At the same time, I felt pure relief. I had already wasted 20 years with a woman I just discovered. I shouldn't have. I was confident, but I could have 40 more years without her. And that was a blessing. I'm halfway through my life, so there's still a lot ahead of me. This was my chance to free myself from her and her dishonesty. And for that, I was grateful. I had to use the power of alcohol to calm myself down, and I fell asleep in the living room, which I think was for the best. I couldn't bear to sleep next to her, especially not in a bed she and her lover had been in. However, before I completely lost myself, I made sure we had a meeting. Afterwards, I went to her office during my lunch break. There, she was very confident about what she convinced me she would do. She said she would find out where Maria was going and get photographic evidence for me. I paid her an initial fee, gave her all the information she requested, and left. After that, I did my best to stay normal on the surface, so Maria wouldn't suspect anything was going on. She didn't seem suspicious, which was good for me. Finally, the weekend arrived. The next day, she told me that one of her college friends from out of town was here and wanted to spend the day with her. I acted distracted while she was on the phone, opened the recorder app, and then apologized and asked her to repeat what she said. She seemed annoyed, but she did. I asked her the friend's name, and she said Ashley. After that, I wished her a good day, and she left a few minutes later. Private detective texted me to tell me he was following my wife, and that I should relax while he did his job. I didn't hear from him again until much later that night. But before that, I texted my wife asking how her day with Ashley was going. It took her about 2 hours to reply, and she said it was fine. It was more evidence for me when the detective finally contacted me. He told me that she was back home, and that he had gotten several photos of her. Another man said he would send me digital copies whenever I wanted, but that he would also print the photos. I told him I would pick everything up at the beginning of the following week. From the moment Maria entered the house again, I honestly didn't see her as the person I knew. Maybe I was just discovering who she really was. Although I was glad to have clarity when Monday came, I went to the detective's location and collected the images. There I clearly saw her and Dr. Rosen near the entrance of a hotel, holding hands as they entered. The detective must have had another camera because he also had a video of the same sequence of photos. The photos were thorough. They also had timestamps, and not only could I see when they entered earlier in the day, but I also saw the timestamps when they left, stopping in front of my wife's car, where they kissed passionately. It was already dark at that point, so the photos were much better than the video. In total, she spent 7 hours with him at the hotel. I felt disgusted. Now this is where this ends for now. It's obvious I'm going to kick her out of the house, but I want to make sure I hit her where it hurts the most. We have children, and she's busy doing this. At this point, I'm not even sure if they're really mine, and the thought of it hurts even more than her infidelity. There's a lot I'll have to do, and I'd love some advice on putting my plan together. Everyone involved must suffer. I know Dr. Rosen. I've shaken this man's hand before. I need the best you can offer me in terms of ideas. I'm patient. Thanks to everyone who contributed to my previous post. I know it's been a while, but a quick reminder. I came here to talk about finding out my wife was cheating on me with her doctor. I found out because I discovered an open can of tuna, even though she is disgusted by it. It's a strange way to find out that someone is cheating on you. But it looks like I'm going to have to buy shares in Starkist at this point to save myself from infidelity. Now, I managed to get a divorce lawyer fairly quickly, but I didn't start anything too hastily. My first concern was to make sure my children were really mine. As soon as they returned from their vacation at their uncle's house, I took them straight to a lab for a paternity test. Both, fortunately, are mine. That felt like a huge weight lifted from my shoulders. I can't express how relieved I was. Once this was confirmed, I went to the divorce lawyer and presented all the evidence I had gathered. In her opinion, infidelity was very easy to prove, and it was also clear that my wife had planned the cheating. With total shamelessness, she covered it up, lying as best she could. But I was lucky enough to pick up on the signal. The lawyer was also very amused by the role that Tuna played in all of this. He told me that he'd never had a case over a can of tuna. The first thing he needed to do was serve her the divorce papers, and he wanted to do it in a way that would hurt and humiliate her. Looking back, I barely recognized myself, but I decided to do it during her family's Thanksgiving dinner. Some people enjoy family drama during Thanksgiving, so I decided to give them a show. We were all sitting at the table when someone knocked on the door. I offered to open it because I knew who I was waiting for. Finally, I opened the door and saw an unfamiliar face. He asked if Maria was around. I greeted him and let him walk up to the table. He asked for Maria, she introduced herself, and he handed her an envelope with the classic, You've been notified before leaving." Suddenly, the place fell silent, and I decided to stay back and enjoy what I had just done. She opened the envelope, looked at the papers inside, and looked at me. Clearly, she couldn't understand what was going on, since she had no idea what I knew. I did not react to my face, and I continued eating the food on the plate in front of me. I think just by the look she gave me, everyone could tell she had received the divorce papers. She managed to stammer out a "why" right there in front of everyone, and they seemed to be waiting for my answer. So I laid it out. I didn't hold back any details, except what had triggered my suspicions. I wanted her to realize that she couldn't hide things from me. Not only was she clumsy at covering her tracks, but she didn't say anything in response. She couldn't even defend herself. And I think at that moment, everyone knew I was telling the truth. It was her family and some relatives, including me. But everyone was silent. I asked someone to cut me a piece of turkey, but no one said or did anything. I had enjoyed the chaos enough, and the whole situation was becoming awkward at that point. So I said thank you for the meal and got up to leave before walking out the door. I told her not to come home and that she no longer had a place there. I could see her start to cry before I left. Don't worry, this all happened late at dinner, so the kids had already gone off to play video games. I admit I was a little reckless here because I had no idea if the kids could have been present when the papers were delivered. I probably would have sent them upstairs if they had been there. I called the kids, and we returned home. I told them their mom would stay to help clean up. The oldest is 10, so she didn't ask many questions. The next thing I did with the help of the private detective was to report Dr. Rosen. This man slept with my wife, who was his patient, and I didn't need a professional to tell me that it was unethical. The medical board eventually agreed, and so did his hospital. He lost his job there, and his license was suspended for 5 years, which made me feel pretty good. After that, it was time to face the divorce. I knew things were going to get complicated, but I went in hoping to get as much as possible in my favor. The divorce process took quite a while, but at the end of the day, I think I got the best hand I could have gotten. I made sure to present absolutely all the evidence I had about the situation and her infidelity. I think a really strong case was made in my favor. She didn't even deny her infidelity in court, although her lawyer tried to take the absent husband approach to make it seem like she didn't have much of a choice and just wanted to feel loved. That was stupid and didn't work for her. In the end, I kept the house and my car, and I have custody of my children most of the time, with a custody agreement of approximately 70-30. Fortunately, since I have the burden of custody most of the time, the judge was lenient, and I don't need to pay child support since my wife's income is sufficient to care for them while they are in her custody. However, the large difference in our income means that I do have to pay spousal support, but only for what I consider a relatively short term. This was much better than I had expected. I work a lot, and I know that women are usually favored when it comes to custody. So, I felt like I might have gotten the short end of the stick and would have to pay both child support and alimony. Fortunately, I only got one of those, and for a much shorter time. Besides, the house is still mine, and fairly. Honestly, I hate that 20 years had to go down the drain. But they gave me my 2 beautiful children and a life lesson, so I can't hate it too much. I was lucky enough to discover that my wife was cheating on me, and I trusted my instinct when I saw something out of place. The only moral I can share with the gentleman who read this is to always be on the lookout for things out of place and never be afraid of being suspicious. After all the questions you asked me in my previous story, I think it would be better to answer everyone in one post instead of the comments, especially those questions that many asked. One in particular, and one that I found funny, at least now that some time has passed, is whether the tuna was brought by the doctor or taken from home. Unfortunately, she took it from home, from my own stash. As I said, my ex-wife didn't like it. So, the cans of tuna were mine. Not only did he sleep with my ex-wife, but he also ate my food. I didn't find that part funny. Although losing his job was funny, but not for him. Another oft-repeated comment, although it wasn't a serious question as such, is whether my ex-wife cheated on me with a cat. I love you. You've made me laugh despite the sadness of my story. Something many suggested is that I sue for alienation of affection. But unfortunately, in my state, it's no longer possible. There are only a few states in this country where you can sue for that. Unfortunately, beyond making him lose his job, I haven't been able to do anything. Always putting aside ideas that could get me in trouble, like hitting him, for example. But it's interesting because as far as I know, he's still unemployed. I suppose he'll have enough savings to last the 4 years and a few months that he still has to wait to get his license back. But that's a long time. Besides, I don't know how much savings he has, since he had a fairly high standard of living. The good news for him is that now he can pursue women without having to rush to the hospital. But from what I know, he's no longer with my ex-wife. It's likely that once the adrenaline of the affair wore off, the two of them lost their passion. Leaving the questions aside, I have to say that I sold my house. I put it up for sale shortly after the divorce and managed to sell it fairly quickly. It was a nice house, but I couldn't sleep in the master bedroom since my ex-wife had cheated on me there, so I slept in the guest room. Living in a house where you have those memories isn't the most pleasant thing in the world. So, I got something new, and everything's going well.